So far away, Lucas. What's your favourite colour?
I mean, purple, obviously, is the best.
Good choice. I wonder if people can tell what mine is. It's not green. That's the thing. I don't even like green, but then I have to keep wearing green in all like everything I do. And then when I play video games, I've got like, my character's green and stuff like that. Because people are like, oh, why is it not green? Like the green screen. It's like, well, okay, sure.
I mean, you're the one who leaned into the bit.
I did, yes. Anyway, so it might seem a bit weird that the title of today's video says we're talking about colours and Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So we should probably explain, shouldn't we, Lucas?
I mean, Better Call Saul's good, right?
Yeah, Better Call Saul is fantastic. Something people maybe don't realise is how just meticulously constructed both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are and were. Because as we're recording this, the show is currently airing. But it's just everything is thought about right down to the most minute detail, including the colour of near enough everything in every single scene.
When you mean like every colour, like how ridiculously detailed are we getting here?
Oh, well, that's something we'll get into as we cover the section on colour and its symbolism on the Breaking Bad Wiki. And annoyingly, it's colour with an O, not an OU, but it's an American show, so I guess we have to forgive that.
So Americans destroying the English language,
yeah.
Like Carl.
But even on the most superficial level, just the names of characters. Walter White, Jesse Pinkman, Ben Schwartz, which is German for black.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty like even on like the most superficial level, like the characters have all got like colours in their names.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone's ever done like the introduction to film theory, they'll probably learn about something called colour theory, where colours represent certain emotions, and you can use those to set the tone of a scene visually before a single word of dialogue is even said. So like for example, Lucas, what does the colour red usually denote when it's used in media?
I would presume it's like either like danger or anger.
Yeah, passion. Sometimes like quite literally fire, and then fire can be used to represent that because fire is a combination of like reds and oranges and yellows. And how about the colour blue?
I would presume that's meant to be more of a calming, soothing colour.
Yeah, you're right there. It's quite calming in both real life and in the world of media. How about the colour yellow? What does that represent to you?
I don't know, like...
It's obvious, Lucas. It represents Mexico. Because if you were in Mexico, you have to put that yellow filter on it, don't you?
Oh, God, yeah.
Which Breaking Bad is not above doing, which I don't like. I don't like that they do that trope, but they do it very well.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, what yellow's actually meant to stand for. Is like a warming sensation, that kind of thing, maybe?
And that's the thing. There are many different interpretations of what different colours mean, and once you understand these concepts, you can both use them and abuse them for various purposes. So for example, we said blue is generally seen as a calming colour, but you can then create a scene that is unnerving by combining the colour blue with a scene that's quite upsetting. And in that way, you can use colour theory to create suspense or shock in the audience by suggesting to them that something is going to go one way and then just do the opposite. And it starts with just a simple breakdown of the colour wheel, and it says that the relationships between characters in the Breaking Bad universe are roughly, and I hate pronouncing this word because I always get it wrong, analogous to relationships between colours on the red, yellow and blue painter's colour wheel. For example, the colour for Walter White's ego, Heisenberg, which is often green, is created by mixing the colours of its two closest partners, Skyler, who often wears blue, and Jesse, who often wears yellow.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just like little details like that, and if you notice that every character, pretty much in every scene that they are in, will wear whatever their associated colour is, except for when they're acting out of character, as we'll get to in a moment.
Right.
And this is one of those things that makes Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul a fantastic show to rewatch, because once you're aware of these details, you can look out for them.
Just you telling me about this makes me want to rewatch Breaking Bad completely.
We have another example here. Heisenberg is often opposed by Hank, who wears shades of orange ranging from red to brown, which those are located at the opposite side of the colour wheel from green. Marie, being the sister of Skyler and the wife of Hank, is represented by purple, which sits between blue and red on the colour wheel. It's like, just who thinks of this? You know who does? Vince Gilligan, a fucking madman. So let's just start on the colour green. So this is often worn by Walter White, Skyler White, Sal Goodman, Jesse Pinkman, and Walter White Jr. And it's pretty obvious what green represents, at least in this show, Lucas. What's green the colour of?
Money.
Money. So it represents money, greed, growth, and envy. And the most obvious example of that is Walter White himself, who wears green in near enough every scene. Except for when he adopts his Heisenberg persona, the colour for which is, primarily black. And something you can notice if you watch Breaking Bad from the start is that Walter White will progressively start wearing darker shades of green.
Oh, so it's not that he starts wearing black as Walter White and the Heisenberg slipping in, it's that the darkness is just creeping in there.
Yeah, he was always there. Walter White was always an arsehole. He just needed the excuse to become the arsehole that he always knew that he was going to be. And you'll see that from the very first episode where he's wearing shades of green and a black tie on and stuff like that. And then as his character just descends more into madness and egomania, the black starts to take over more of his wardrobe. And it's just, again, who thinks of that but a madman? And you have literal and metaphorical examples of green appearing in the show. We have a couple here. So Walter White wears nothing but a green cooking apron and white underwear when he goes cooking. And you can read that there, the green covering, he's quite literally naked underneath, but then he's got the white underwear on. It's that little symbol of purity that's left. That's been quite literally stained by his desire for money and power.
Yeah, because even his white underwear gets stained yellow because of the meth cooking.
Yep, and then you have it's his daughter, Holly White, named for a green plant. And then we have here the maiden name of Skylar and Marie is Lambert, which means bright or green land. In some interpretations of it, the sweat lodge robes that Jesse and other guests wear when they're in rehab are green. And the behind the scenes detail on that is that they don't really sell green robes because green is an awful colour. So they had to go buy a bunch of white robes and dye them that shade of green.
I don't understand how ridiculous you have to be in terms of those hidden little details to be
yep.
Right, we have to make our own custom coloured gowns because we need to commit to the colour in this scene.
Yeah, because he needs to wear green, because that's what green represents in our show. And it's the other thing, once they committed to it in the first season, they had to keep doubling down and stuff in the later seasons. But even the detail for this, look, you ready? His car is a pale green Pontiac Aztec, and so they replaced it with a black Chrysler, which represents his type of it. But again, that colour of Pontiac did not exist when the show was being made. They had to get it custom painted to be that colour. Again, because it's so fucking ugly no one would buy it. Mm-hmm. They specifically picked the ugliest shade of green and then painted the car that colour. And do you want to just know how ridiculous these details get, Lucas? The letters and numbers on the golden moth chemical label, that they use to make some of their methamphetamine. The label is 00892B, the HTML colour code for green. What? Who thinks of this? And Lucas, they've got every colour under the rainbow here. So would you like to just pick one? So we have blue, yellow, brown, purple, orange, pink, red, black, grey, white, beige, multicoloured combinations, and no colour.
Well, tell me about my favourite. Tell me about purple, Carl.
Let's go with purple. So purple, worn by Marie Schrader and Huel Babignon. And its symbolism is luxury, royalty, protection, and safety. And it specifically means not involved with the meth trade, as it is the opposite of yellow on the colour wheel. And most importantly, it also represents self-deception.
I mean, yeah, maybe this is why purple is my favourite colour. Luxury, royalty, self-deception, and not involved with the meth trade.
Yeah, and in regards to the self-deception descriptor, Vince Gilligan has gone on record as saying, well, Marie would say purple is the colour of royalty, meaning that it isn't, because she's wrong about everything. And the character of Marie is most notable character to wear purple.
Yes.
And she wears purple in almost every single scene she is in. If you go back and watch the show, Marie wears purple in literally every scene, save for one, where she's wearing a white hospital lab coat, because that represents the purity right there. And then in the episodes before Hank dies, where she wears black.
Oh.
And that's a hint to the fact that death is approaching.
That's so clever.
So the only time she ever doesn't wear it is when she's at work, when she's completely removed from the series as a whole, or the few episodes before her husband dies. And it's one of those things where, and if you know to look out for that, or if you you were an eagle-eyed fan when that show was first airing, and you noticed that change, and you're aware of the things that Gilligan has said in interviews about colour being so important to characters, that might have spoiled you on the fact something bad was going to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. The fact that she's not wearing purple could be a spoiler.
And we have it here, Lucas, of all of her kitchen accessories are purple. The gift sets that Hank gets from Marie are all purple. When Hank is at home recuperating after being attacked by the cousins, the bed sheets are purple. Everything is purple. I think everything Marie has is purple.
Do you reckon just at one point he bought her a gift early on in the relationship and she, really like this purple gift? He's like, right, I know what to do now.
That thing of like, when you're a man and you're like, oh, I like hot sauce once, and then all you get for Christmas for the next 10 years is hot sauce. But so far we've covered green, the colour of the channel. We've covered purple, your favourite colours. I think we should cover my favourite colour now, which is blue.
Hell yeah.
Blue is my favourite colour. We've got a blue, which is worn by Skylar White, Walter White, Todd Alquist, Lydia Rodart Quayle, Jesse Pinkman, Walter White Jr. And its symbolism is loyalty, power, magic, as in the magic of chemistry, sadness, purity, water, sky, and coldness. And it's a primary colour on the red, yellow, blue colour wheel. And we've got some examples of where blue is used.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, the most obvious is Walter White's just iconic blue meth, which is known throughout the show for its like incredible purity. So it's like, the symbolism of purity coming in there, and then a theme throughout the show is other people trying to replicate that purity and being completely unable to.
And like, do you know whether like, I don't know too much about a good old meth. Mm-hmm. Do you know if like it's possible to make blue meth, or is that just something for the show?
It is something you are able to do, yes. And the science in the show is sound, and something we talked about in a previous video is that both Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul did learn how to make meth from DEA agents. And DEA agents were brought on as supervisors when they were doing the meth cook scenes, and they would walk them through what was inaccurate and what was accurate. And throughout the show's run, they would frequently get letters of admonishment and praise from both law enforcement and criminals for the accuracy.
I like the fact that they got fan letters from meth heads.
No, they get fan letters from both meth heads and meth producers saying how accurate they were, but they'd also get letters of like admonishment from law enforcement of like, well, it's so accurate, people might copy what you're doing. Because you like give so much of a view into this world, people might be able to piece together what you're doing, and something you have to be careful about during editing is not showing too much, and that's why they had like DEA agents come in and tell them like, so how much can we show before we're just teaching people how to make meth? And it's like, you can do about up to this. Also, we'll teach Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul how to make the meth, but they should probably not tell anybody else.
Yeah, and like that's the thing, I think they also covered up a lot of like what the specific chemicals they're using are. Yeah, but one of the stories that came about after the show is that blue meth being sold by a guy called Walter White, I think. Or he looked like Walter White, either way. Started appearing around Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the theory is that he saw the show and thought that's a good advertising thing for my meth, so started making blue meth. And should we just go on to the fun stuff, which will be multicolour combinations to represent characters who are all mixed up, because then we'll get a variety of colour theory there, and then no colour, I feel. Ooh, yeah.
So multicolour combinations, which are largely worn by Walter White Jr. and Saul Goodman. And the symbolism should be pretty obvious here so far, which is conflicted emotions, mixed feelings, confusions, and multiple meanings. Like, it's a pretty easy way to represent conflicted emotions in a character when you've put this much thought into colour theory. But Walter White Jr. often wears striped shirts with multiple colours because his feelings in any given scene are often very conflicted, representing being a teenager.
Yes.
And it says one of the more obvious examples is Sal Goodman, who very often wears conflicting, usually horribly clashing colours, and that's to represent his conflicted loyalties. And the fact that he will flip his loyalties on a dime to whoever he thinks will get him the best deal in that moment. And
he's just about himself, isn't he?
Exactly, and one of my favourite moments in the show is where they're talking about Saul, you look like a fucking clown. And they look over and he's wearing the loudest suit you've ever fucking seen. And it's so bad. And it's just no, it's just one of these, it's a perfect comedy shot. And just Bob Odenkirk plays it off of what? And even rooms in the White household, as small and inconsequential as the bathroom, have meaning in them. For example, the bathroom is yellow and purple. So the yellow representing the meth business, but then the purple representing being outside of it. They're together next to each other, like Walter White and Skylar are for much of the season. And it's the bathroom that they share every morning that they've got to go into to get ready as a married couple. And they're just in a room that symbolically represents closeness to the meth trade and complete removal from it. And just that obliviousness of those two colours being right next to each other is represented by Skylar and Walter being stood next to each other. It's this show! This show is a media nerd's wet fucking dream when you can start, you can sit there and break down scenes of people brushing their fucking teeth for the symbolism. Because something we're often asked is how do you improve media literacy? So we talk about media literacy, watch a show like this with this knowledge in mind and just look out for it. And just after a scene, just pause it and think to yourself, why is all that stuff there?
Yeah.
Because in a show like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, there is nothing in a scene that is not there on purpose. And once you've got that thought in mind, start thinking, why is that there? What does that represent? What does that mean for the character? And then finally, we have no colour whatsoever, which is who's got no colour on them whatsoever, Lucas, in the most famous shot of the series. I dare to say.
Most famous shot of the series?
Yeah. It's Bryan Cranston, isn't it? Walter White. In his underwear. That's like the shot in it, him just stood in his underwear in the desert with a gun. And what do you think having no colour whatsoever on you represents?
Is it just like, nakedness, literally in Walter's case?
Yeah, transparency and having nothing to hide, which is quite ironic because you have that bit where Walter's walking through the grocery store naked.
Yeah.
And he pretends, I was in a fugue state, and he pretends that he had nothing to hide, and then it emerges after the fact that they did. And if you watch those scenes back, I'm pretty sure during the conversation with his therapist, he's wearing darker colours, and that's like the Heisenberg persona.
Oh, right, okay.
So Walter had nothing to hide in that moment, but Heisenberg did. And it's like,
yeah.
This fucking show.
It's so good.
It's like, I can't quite explain how much I love rewatching Breaking Bad. And now Better Call Saul, when it ends, it's going to end soon for at the time of recording this, I'm so tempted to just start another rewatch, just right from the beginning, knowing how it ends and see how well it's all set up, because I bet it all is.
Question is, are you in a rewatch, would you do Breaking Bad first or Better Call Saul first?
I think I'd do Better Call Saul. It's like Breaking Bad is good, but the main character's not likable. By design, that's something that's yes. Very much by design. Walter White is not supposed to be a character you like, and something I greatly enjoyed on a rewatch of Breaking Bad, I think last year, is realising, Walter White's an arsehole from second one. Because it's off, some people misunderstand the show, and it's like, a guy's tragic downfall into a life of crime. It's like, no, he was always an arsehole. Second one, he's an arsehole. Episode 1, he's a piece of shit.
If I remember rightly, isn't the reason he's a teacher essentially because he was an arsehole and, cut himself off from the other scientists, right? Yeah,
his ego. It's Grey Matter. It's like the company that his partner built up.
Yeah.
Ben Schwartz. Yeah. And they even had a nod to the colour theory right there. Walter White, Ben Schwartz, Black White, Grey Matter. It's thinking company. He left because he left because he met Ben Schwartz's wife, who he was dating previously. She was really rich. He was intimidated by that, was a petty arsehole, and left her. Because he couldn't deal being with a woman who had more power and control than he did.
Mm-hmm.
And then he never gets over it and keeps making it everybody else's fault.
And it's the moment when you realise that Walter White isn't a sympathetic villain.
No, he's never sympathetic. That's the thing, episode 1.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. But, I think a lot of people go in having that, kind of natural stance of you must have sympathy for the main character and, oh, look, he's down on his luck, he's a teacher with cancer and blah, blah, blah. And it's no, actually, he's not a sympathetic villain at all. Yeah, it's and repeatedly throughout the show, they indicate that he is a piece of shit and it's his ego is his downfall. They have. When he meets Ben Schwartz and they offer to pay for his cancer treatments. He's no, I'm going to pay for it myself. It's why? I will look after my family. It's not a weakness to admit that you need help or accept help from a friend. And then you realise, he doesn't consider Ben Schwartz to be a friend. But Ben Schwartz doesn't realise that because he's thought, you are my friend, I want to help you. And Walter White sees it as pity. It's not pity, it's a friend helping you out. But Walter White doesn't have friends. He has people that he uses to his own ends. And that includes his wife, his child, and everyone around him. And that's ultimately what causes all of his downfall. It's his own pride and ego. And I get baffled when you see discussions of it. People oh yeah, he's such a tragic character. He's not, he's awful. Mm-hmm. The entire show would have been a non-issue if he just swallowed his pride.
That's all he needed to do. It's I think it's episode 2 or 3 you get in when they're talking about the meth problem or something like that, and you see Walter White, he starts just grabbing Skylar's thigh. And she thinks it's because, he's attracted to her. In that moment, it's not. It's because he's hearing people talk about the horrible meth problem he started, and he's literally getting hard to the thought that people are talking about him. And he sees it, and he just wants to take it out on his wife. And it's in that moment, he's using his wife for his own gratification with no thought given to it. And it's she thinks that, he's just, taking more of an interest in me as his partner. It's no. he's getting off on the fact people are talking about him because he's purely fueled by ego. And you're supposed to like this character. It's like, no, you're not supposed to like him. And Vince Gilligan's gone on record like he's always a villain. He's a villain from second one. And then people say, but no, he's he's a heroic. He's not a heroic. He kills like 8 people, including like a kid. What a show. Definitely rewatch it with this stuff in mind.